Today I'm going to be exploring the speech called What to the Slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass. I'm going to be starting with the speech summary. Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, I do not remember ever having appeared as a speaker before any assembly more shrinkingly, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do today. Privileged to speak in this beautiful hall, and to address many who now honor me with the emancipated people of God. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave platform which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. It carries your mind back to the day, and to the act, and that day. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life, and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. Glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. 76 years, though a good old age for a man, is but a mere speck in the life of a nation. A lot of time in individual men, but nations number their years by thousands. To this fact, you are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career. Still, thought and hope is much needed. Under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon, heart may well beat lighter at the thought that America is young, and that she is still in May. He does not hope the high lessons of wisdom of were the nation older. The thought that America is young. Great streams are not easily turned from channels. With rivers, so with nations. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country had the English government as their home government, and England as the fatherland. Government, although a considerable distance from your home, did, in the exercise of its parental prerogatives, impose upon its colonial children such restraints. But your fathers, who had not adopted the fashionable idea of this day, of the infallibility of government, and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government is in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of those burdens and measures fully accords with that of your fathers. America was right, and England wrong, is exceedingly easy. Pronounced against England, and in favor of the cause of the colonies, tried men's soul. We're gonna talk about Frederick Douglass, or the presenter of the speech. Formerly a slave, Frederick Douglass went on to become a well-known activist, novelist, and a public speaker. He gained recognition in the abolitionist movement, which worked to abolish slavery both before and during the American Civil War. He persisted in advocating for equality and human rights after the battle and the Emancipation Proclamation of 1862 until his death in 1895. Douglass finally escaped Covey's plantation in 1838, first boarding a train to Havre de Grace, Maryland, following several unsuccessful attempts to flee. From there, he passed through Delaware, another slave state, on his way to New York and David Ruggles' safe home, an abolitionist. He sent for Anna Murray, a free black woman from Baltimore, whom he had met when he held captive by the Alts. Once he had arrived in New York in September 1838, once she had joined him, the two were wed. Together, they would have 5 kids. Douglass was an author and a leader who fought for women's rights, particularly the ability for women to vote. The civil rights movement of the 1960s and later was inspired by his work. We're going to talk about the speech next. On July 5th, 1852, Frederick Douglass gave a speech titled What to the Slave is the 4th of July at a gathering hosted by the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society at Corinthian Hall in Rochester, New York. The speech is one of Douglass's best-known pieces of writing. The speech advances a value-based argument against the continuation of slavery in the United States while making reference to the Independence Day celebrations that had just taken place in the country the day before. This is done through the use of stinging irony, caustic rhetoric, and sharp textual analysis of the Christian Bible, the Declaration of Independence, and the U.S. Constitution. The purpose of the speech is that Douglass wanted his audience to understand that their actions do not reflect their stated values. He discussed how Americans take great pride in their nation, their religion, and their celebration of freedom and liberty, yet that they deny such things to a large portion of their population. Now we're going to move on to techniques. The speaker employs logos or the capacity to speak to a group of people's feeling and convictions according to the speech's text in order to appeal to his target audience. Douglas also uses a fire and brimstone to produce idyllic comparison, unique images, rhythmic advances, and emotions. The third strategy is the use of ethos or the appeal to the credibility and character of the author or speaker. When Douglas claims that the day is important to other people but not him, he also elicits pathos. By reciting an intense and captivating poem, the American speaker also uses pathos to his advantage. The poem expresses the disappointment and continued pursuit of liberation felt by slaves. The poem shows how Black people are desperately seeking equality and freedom while also inspiring thought in a white audience. The poem also highlights God's desire for all people to live in freedom and equality. Douglas also continues by proving that the 4th of July is one of the most heinous mockeries in human history to the freed Americans, the slaves, and the white majority. Douglas makes the point that even slaves should be able to have freedom rather than being treated like brutes, because slavery is not a divine institution. Douglas also makes the point that even slaves should have the freedom rather than being treated like brutes, because slavery is not a divine institution. Douglas also affirms that everyone has the fundamental right to freedom. Any argument against it is therefore equivalent to trying to refute a scientific fact. The primary point that the speaker has been trying to prove during his speech is how he closes. He and the emancipated slaves only have the 4th of July to serve as a repulsive reminder of their cruelty and ridicule their oppressors and the government had inflicted upon them. While other Americans continued to celebrate, the downtrodden continued to weep and live in despair. If the audience recognizes the horrors of colonization, slavery, and oppression, they will recognize the drawbacks and ills of this vice and fight against it. Douglas succeeds in appealing to the white audience to embrace the idea of equality in the nation by juxtaposing himself as an African American and a fellow citizen. Douglas has exposed the injustice and hypocrisy of the American government, which continues to uphold segregation against a segment of society through the aforementioned rhetorical techniques. Thank you.